to our delegation for being here. We've been doing this for the last few years, and it's a great opportunity to have our delegates with us for an evening. This has been a particularly busy week for them, so I just want to acknowledge and thank them very much for yet again spending another evening listening and talking about priorities in District 20 and particularly tonight in Tacoma Park. This is an exciting time in our city. We're facing many opportunities and challenges that we've all been discussing, and we'll talk tonight more specifically about a number of them. We have things like the arrival of the Purple Line, increased growth in population in the region, the need to continue to provide affordable, good quality housing, the urgency to mitigate and adapt to climate change, and as we do very well here in Tacoma Park, push back on the policies and actions of the current federal administration. These are things we've been doing in 2018 and plan to continue to do in 2019. This evening, we're going to walk through a number of legislative priorities, but before we do that, we do have the opportunity for members of the public to come and speak. If you were supposed to sign up ahead of time, I will call your name. Please come to the podium, state your name and where you live, and you will have 3 minutes. The first is Jessica Landum.
Good evening. My name is Jessica Landman, and I am a resident of Tacoma Park's Ward 1. First, I want to thank you very much for coming into our City Council chamber this evening. It's really great to have our local elected officials tuning into us at a local level the way you are. I'm a resident of Ward 1, and I'm also active with a civic group called Community Vision for Tacoma. Our watchword is Community First, and our vision is a thriving, inclusive, green, and welcoming city. I'm here to ask you today to help us with one thing in Annapolis that I think is very important, that is also listed in Tacoma Park's legislative priorities that the council has provided. As you probably know, we have a major traffic and congestion problem at the Tacoma Junction intersection, where 2 state highways converge into a tangled mess of traffic, and where additional development is being contemplated. There are definitely community differences about the desirability of the proposed development, but there seems to be a lot of agreement throughout the community that the intersection is gridlocked, unsafe for pedestrians and bikers, and risky for emergency vehicles trying to get out of our local fire station. The State Highway Administration is about to begin a study of the intersection and will recommend solutions over the coming year. We do want things to be fixed, but we don't want a bigger road to allow more cars to pass through more quickly. That would simply induce additional automobile traffic demand at a time when we need to be moving away from cars as a solution to our problem. We want to officially rule out road widening as a solution to the traffic concerns at that intersection. And that's how we can live up to the goal of the recently adopted Complete Streets legislation in Maryland that calls for, among other things, promoting healthy communities by encouraging the use of multiple modes of transportation other than single occupancy motor vehicles, and for improving safety by designing streets to include features such as wider sidewalks, dedicated biking facilities, medians, pedestrian streetscape features, and green stormwater infrastructure. We want to be a complete streets community. So I'm here to ask for your help in shepherding through a revision to the Maryland Transportation Code to permanently prohibit the widening of State Highway 410 as it traverses Tacoma Park between Fenton Avenue and New Hampshire Avenue. If you adopt a provision like that in state law, that could go a long way towards easing concerns that the upcoming study might yield a recommendation for fixing our traffic problems with more space for cars. And we would like to work with you on framing the legislation and also in supporting its enactment in Annapolis. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Diana Yance. Did I pronounce that correctly? Diana? All right, we'll call her later. Mr. Sherwood, Wayne Sherwood is next.
Good evening. My name is Wade Sherwood, and I live here in Tacoma Park, and I've been here since 1991. I have a master's degree in city planning, and I'm currently on the board of Montgomery Housing Partnership, although I'm speaking tonight solely on my own and not on behalf of the partnership. I have put together sort of written things I want to say, and I gave a copy to the city clerk, so I hope that maybe she'd be able to send it to you later. The city council people have it, but I mean to our delegation, maybe she could send it to you. I'm not going to be able to get to all this on my 3 minutes, but I'll pick the first one that's of greatest concern to mine, the purple line. I have looked at studies from all around the country, in Seattle and Denver and in New England, the Boston area, who have done these kinds of major corridors, and they have a lot of predictions about possible displacement, and the predictions, I mean, they've over and over, and people have warned in these studies about the kinds of things that could happen, and in fact, in most of those cases, especially in Seattle, those things have happened. There was not enough kind of political will to fight back and push back against those things. And we've heard the same things here along the purple line. As I'm sure you know, the University of Maryland has done a lot of excellent studies, and the studies are on their website, and I've got their website in my testimony. And a year ago, they came out with an action plan of all these great, and it's got wonderful goals in there, the things that we need to do. And there's a lot of things, and no displacement, and one-for-one replacement, and trying to help people out. And I put the link to that action plan into my testimony as well. The problem is that there's the resources that are currently available to try to deal with some of that are negligible compared to the number of people that are likely to be affected, I believe. And again, that data is in the University of Maryland report, the number of people within the. So I have done some research, and I've gone out and I've talked to Garrett out at the University of Maryland, and there is a concept which is already partly in state law called land value capture, and it takes the form in Maryland of tax increment financing, and it's not usually used for the kinds of things I'm thinking about, but it certainly could be expanded, I believe, so that you could designate a corridor, say in Montgomery County, as a tax district, and then you could pledge that when those taxes go up, the property taxes go up in that area, they could be used to pay off debt, and then that authority could borrow money either from the state or for some other to get some money at the front end of that process that then could be used for programs to help out. And I would be glad to provide additional information, and again, it's in the testimony, and there's a couple of other things in here too, like the New Hampshire Avenue Rec Center.
Thank you very much,
Thank you very much.
Mr. Sherwood, and thank you for sending your testimony ahead of time. Next, we have Ms. Colleen Cordes.
Good evening. Thank you so much for being here. This is a wonderful opportunity. Really appreciate having all of our local elective representatives here tonight. I'm also with Community Vision for Tacoma, and I wanted to talk about the issue of small cell towers. We had a very well-attended teach-in a couple of weeks ago. Councilmember Jarrett Smith, we were very fortunate to have him on our panel representing the council and the mayor. And Councilmember Casey Kostick was also there, which we really appreciate. And we had the Executive Director of Environmental Health Trust gave us a wonderful presentation on the environmental and health research that underlines the public's concerns about the public safety and health and environmental issues, with having a really dense network of small cell towers to boost 4G and then eventually for the 5G network. So our concern is that the public really has a lot of concerns here, and that we don't want to see any more federal preemption, and certainly we don't want to see the state preempt the local rights, long established right to regulate at this level of affecting the residents' everyday lives. So we would ask that you would oppose any attempt in the state, at the state level, to preempt the county and the city from handling this issue. We've got a good ordinance that we're working on locally in Tacoma Park, and we would love your support in helping to make that as strong and as focused on the public interest priorities as possible, because we see that as what should be the deciding factor in any ordinance or in any law at any level should be the public interest. And we're concerned that that has not been the highest priority in terms of a very powerful industry at the federal level, and we're afraid could happen at the state level. So we would ask you to really keep an eye on that. And we also are very happy that our city council it supports the idea of having a really fair, equitable distribution of whatever small cell towers we do end up with, or whatever access to wireless technologies we end up with, and that this be racially and social economically equitable, so that no one, whether you live in an apartment, a condo, or a single-family house, faces a public health or safety or an environmental risk from this. So we thank you very much, and really do appreciate you guys coming out tonight.
Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Byrne Kelly. Okay, you can go next. Just, Mr. Kelly, you can go first, and then
Okay.
if you want to catch your breath, you can go next, whatever.
No, I'm sorry, and I don't know if you all had I started at 7:30. So, my name's Diana Yance, and I'm here as a representative of the Tacoma Park Environmental Committee. And we're excited that you all are coming to our city council meeting. And we wanted to ask each of you whether you will be sponsoring or co-sponsoring the Clean Energy Jobs Act. And if each of you could commit to doing two things, co-sponsoring the bill and working to make the path towards 100% a stronger path, a clearer path.
They'll respond after public comments.
Oh, I
Okay,
see.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay? Thank you. Okay, Mr. Kelly? Nope.
Good
You know
evening.
the rules.
Welcome back, and Lorig, welcome first. Good to have you here. Byrne Kelly, local troublemaker. I have questions this evening, and first, good evening. Welcome back to what was formerly the People's Republic of Tacoma Park. My questions this evening refer primarily to state transportation plans and policies from Maglev to Scooterville. Will the 20th delegation support Maglev where and as it is presently being planned? As a transportation planner, I am not in favor of it, and here is why. It is not mass transit. It is more akin to the Concorde and consumes way too much money, land, natural resources, and energy for only those who are rich. Do you support an additional Potomac Bridge west of the Beltway? I'm not sure where it should go or if practical or feasible, but it may be inevitable. Do you support the governor's Beltway widening with demand pricing that again serves primarily the rich and businesses and will encourage more cars by way of induced demand? Are you ready for and have you considered the widening of the 301 corridor and Potomac Bridge as a bypass of Washington for East Coast through trucking, possibly utilizing the power lines as a trucking corridor? Do you envision or support another bridge across the Chesapeake Bay? Are you ready for the invasion of bike share, scooter share, and hopefully car share? What will you do to manage this so it does not look like the chaos of the introduction of the free-ranging dockless littering of bikes we recently experienced? What is the current state law with regards to local state highway improvements and mandatory bike lanes? I was involved with the IKEA project and the widening of Route 1 and the demand for bike lanes on Route 1. And I proffered two alternatives, Rhode Island Avenue and the Paint Branch alternative, as opposed to putting bikes into the thick of traffic. We have a great new master plan for bikes. Montgomery County Park and Planning has recently published it, and they seem to be way out in front between the two park and plannings. I would like to see coordination between the two. Here in Tacoma Park, I would like to see the Tacoma branch, which comes up from Sligo to Ray Road and crosses over New Hampshire to connect to 4th and Kansas. That would get you to the Metropolitan Branch Trail, and it would not cost our city very much to just do our part on our side. They've done some upgrades to the stream, but the Tacoma branch is it's basically needs improvements, and it has no trails along it. But it's a perfect gradient to get from the Sligo Creek up to the Fort Totten area.
Thank you, Mr.
And
Kelly.
Thank you very much.
Next, we have Mr. Seth Grimes.
Good evening. Thanks for the opportunity to appear before you this evening. I've seen some of you just a few days ago, although my record and testimony is not so good because one of the delegation bills I testified for has already been withdrawn. I really like the agenda that the City Council has prepared for state legislative priorities. I won't address those items. Instead, I'll focus on environmental agenda, addressing both the city and the state. The state has some great bills coming up in the session ahead of us. Some of those are on areas where the city has already acted, which I think is a great precedent. For instance, we have the Clean Energy Jobs Act that Diana Younts mentioned a few minutes ago. I would look to the state delegation to support that, and I know that the city will get behind that. I'll digress and mention that the Tacoma Park Mobilization's next big meeting on January 26th will be environmentally focused, and we have a tentative yes from Senator Brian Feldman, who is the Senate sponsor of that act, and I hope you all will consider joining us. There are other environmental priorities. Fighting against beltway widening is one of them, but I'll mention two things that are coming up before the state legislature. One is a chlorpyrifos pesticide ban that failed in the Senate this year in 2018. I would look to you to support that. The focus on pesticides just emphasizes one area where the Tacoma Park City Council has gotten ahead of Montgomery County first and perhaps led the way for the state to act. Another is in the polystyrene foam ban that is going to come before the state again, and I hope you all will support that. I believe you might be all co-sponsors on the delegation. Tacoma Park ban polystyrene foam. The city is going to be looking at a plastic straw ban. I would actually encourage you to look much wider at that in an effort to eliminate the use of single-use disposable plastic materials, even when they're recyclable. When the city did its polystyrene food serviceware ban in 2013, we actually looked initially at a compostables requirement where all disposable single-use materials would be compostable. We couldn't do that because basically there were no commercial facilities for composting at that point. I would urge you to look at that, and I'd urge the state delegates to see if you can find ways to revive Governor O'Malley's zero waste plan by 2040, which Governor Hogan unfortunately overturned in 2017. I think we need a very aggressive environmental agenda. I'm very pleased that Gina Mathias, as the city's sustainability manager, has been working with the council, community members, the Environment Committee, to come up with very aggressive plans for energy conservation. And I urge you to continue that and for the state delegation to support that however you can, including financially. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Ms. Mary Jane Machui.
Thank you, everybody, for being here. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I just want to speak to you from, I guess, more from my little family, and plead for help with people with mental illness, brain injury, and developmental disabilities. I'm bipolar. I'll be that way all my life. I have to take potentially dangerous medications to keep me on keel. So I'm cognizant. I live day by day, and my son does too. My son is in a really bad situation. He has an erratic work schedule. He's a valet. He's being bullied at work by the other people, because when you see people who are different, people tend to bully you. and he's been bullied all his life pretty much, but anyways. And I wanted to say, people with, he also has depression, which a lot of people do. If you're smart enough to know you're different and maybe a little inferior in some ways, then you get depressed. It's natural. And he's refusing to take meds for that. But anyways, I just want to say, some agencies have failed us. The Development Disabilities Administration, I'm still fighting with, thank you, Will, for listening. They're still fighting with them. Those people told me, now this is weird, if my son was in jail, if he tries to hurt somebody, he'll get help through them. But since he's a, quote, good kid and is not trying to hurt somebody, they're not helping him. And does that make sense? I mean, geez. But anyways, and I'm fighting with the Housing Opportunities Commission for my ex-husband, who was a really good person, and Miss Wilkins helped. If it wasn't for her, I don't think he would ever get off their waiting list. And he's a hard worker, and he got shot in the head many years ago and has problems because of that, and he really, really deserves a place of his own, and thank you very much. And I'd like to also talk about, thank Wolfgang Mergner, and who has helped us through the Village of Tacoma Park. If it wasn't for them, I've gone through the Tacoma Park Mobilization, Community Vision et al. They don't want to listen to us, people like us, because they think, oh, we're going to take resources from them to help us, which is really sad because we're the lowest of the low. And we come in all different colors and sizes and sexual orientations. So remember that. We can be a unifier because of that. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Maturi. Next, I have Elizabeth Thompson.
Thanks so much for giving us this opportunity. My name is Elizabeth Thompson. I live at 419 Elm Avenue. I was really lucky to grow up in Tacoma Park. I got to learn from my parents and my neighbors just what a difference a small, thoughtful, committed group of citizens can make. And I'm here to support the goals of mitigating and adapting to climate change and creating a healthy and sustainable city for all of our residents. The urgency of policy and actions on these fronts is more visible every day. And the City of Tacoma Park has been a great leader in that. We look forward to your continued leadership. All the work that you guys do, that your staff does, really inspires us. And I think in times that can be so challenging nationally, the leadership that the city provides is really important. There's a level of courage that I know we will need to get to a place where we're really making the difference that I know Tacoma Park can make on that front. So thank you all for your work, and I look forward to supporting it.
Thank you. Karen Lovejoy.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for coming, and thank you for this opportunity to speak. I'm here representing myself and some neighbors who could not be here. And essentially, we're concerned about some of the unintended consequences of the development that is going on in Tacoma Park. As you know, there's development planned at Tacoma Junction. There's development planned, around the Purple Line, Adventist Hospital, Montgomery College, and redevelopment of John Evans Andrews School. And then there are smaller projects such as the Tacoma Park Middle School. And in some cases, this of course brings a new vitality to our community. However, we wanted to point out two overriding concerns. And the first and most critical is the issue of gentrification and displacement of affordable housing along with small independent businesses due to rising rents. We've seen local businesses having a hard time with rents rising, and we're pleased that our city worked to protect local businesses in conjunction with the Purple Line development, but it seems that nothing is being done to protect small, independent minority businesses around the junction. In addition, we continue to remain concerned about a potential loss of our remarkably diverse community grocery store, the co-op. It seems that little has been done to protect it in terms of the impending development at the junction. And so that remains a major concern for us. Businesses, so essentially we're asking you to consider the issue of gentrification, to give some attendance to this issue, and to give support to renters and businesses. The second issue is congestion and traffic. That is being problems that are stemming from also the development issue. If planning isn't done wisely, then you've got seniors, you've got bikers, and all commuters are having issues with, they're just safety issues. And so we're asking you to really think about the plans and get involved with the State Highway Department in terms of evaluating how these plans are going to affect Tacoma Park. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lovejoy. Next is Ms. Pearsall.
Hi, I'm Lorraine Pearsall. I live at 7708 Tacoma Avenue, near Philadelphia Avenue, and I'm here to just talk a little bit about one item here, which is about, I don't have my reading glasses, but legislation prohibiting MDOT from spending any funds for the construction of Maryland Route 410 through the city that would involve the addition of a new through lane for motor vehicles. On the surface, if you don't think about that too much, it sounds pretty good. But the reality is I would like to see that changed, because I can see ways in which that if the road was widened for other issues, that a lane could be cobbled out of it in the future. And I'm very concerned about that because of the way this is written. And I would like it to be a little more to the heart of the matter. In other words, that it should really, that anything, the last sentence, that would involve the widening of 410 would not be allowed, or there would be no funds or construction money for that, or the widening of Philadelphia and Ethan Allen Avenues, could just really to speak to the heart of it, because I think there's no room for, these are very busy roads. You look at Philadelphia Avenue, there's no place to widen. There's no room without taking land from neighbors. And I am very worried about that. For whatever purpose, we really can't do that. There's just no room. We have to find other ways to route things that we want, such as biking and all of that. And it would be safer as well. I mean, that's not so. So I think this language is crafted is not protective. And for example, if we had 2 4-foot lanes for bikers on that road, we'd have to widen the road. And later on, perhaps, without the use of construction funds, SHA might decide 10 years down the road, well, we don't need to use construction funds to do this. It's already there. So we're just going to have a 3rd lane. And it's the way this is worded. So please keep it geared toward not widening Philadelphia and Ethan Avenue. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Merrill Leffler, please.
Good evening. I'm Merrill Leffler. My wife Ann Slayton and I have lived in Tacoma Park for 41 years, 39 of them at 15 Sherman Avenue. So I'm speaking here as a resident, a city resident, but also as a board member of the Friends of the Tacoma Park, Maryland Library, which supports many of the programs, the outreach programs of the library, and they are extensive. So I'm here for 2 reasons. One, because District 20 representatives and the delegation is here, and I'm here to thank you and the delegation for the support of the library renovation and the past support of $150,000 through a bond bill. But I'm also here for a second reason, and that's to ask for your continuing support as the plans move ahead. And in particular, as part of the design process, a floodplain study was required, and that floodplain is larger, I've learned, than it was in the past. The cost of this study and the changes to the plan that the council and Tacoma Park residents through public hearings have supported will require additional monies, estimated at $150,000 in bond bill funds. The Tacoma Park Library, Maryland Library, has a unique role in the city. In my view, and I've said this before, I feel it is the soul center, the SOUL center of the city. In addition to the depth and richness of the book collection and the wide circulation, the library has been innovative in its extensive programming for residents of all ages, for preschoolers, young children, teens and tweens and teens, adults and elders, not that I would separate out the last two. With all this major activity every day, our library facilities are simply not adequate. And just a few examples. Through serving a large number of low-income residents and immigrants, there's not enough space for books and resources to truly meet their needs. And the children's room lacks comfortable space for school-aged children to read, study, and collaborate. Meanwhile, dedicated space for teens, and we have a large number of teens that are using the library, is just simply not there. And it is not an afterthought to point out that the library's facilities are not sufficiently accessible for those with disabilities. With all this, there's so much vibrant activity. All you have to do, you can go down there almost at any time of day. I was really knocked out several years ago when I was there, when this whole parade of fourth graders from Piney Branch Elementary came trooping through. Well, they come down there regularly, the whole term. So it is exciting to look ahead for this renovation, what it will mean to city residents, and the continued support of the District 20 delegation will help make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Marilyn Abbott?
Good evening. My name's Marilyn Abbott. I live at 503 Philadelphia Avenue, also known as Maryland 410. If I had read Lorraine's prepared statement, I probably wouldn't need to be here. I also am focusing on the potential for the widening of 410. I think any language put forth to the state should be prohibit widening or funds to look at widening 410. Philadelphia Avenue is narrow. There's no shoulder. Most of the yards are not deep that front on Philadelphia Avenue, and the space between the curb and the sidewalk is narrow. From what research I've done, it looks like a 4-foot lane in each direction would be required for bicycles and scooters, which equals 8 feet. And that's based on the volume of traffic that's on the street and also the speed limit. Philadelphia Avenue has a 30-mile-per-hour speed limit, not 25 like the rest of the city. Not only could the 8 feet be expensive to acquire, but more importantly, I think it places pedestrians at risk and danger. There is quite a bit of pedestrian traffic on Philadelphia, in particular school students being walked to school or going to school on their own. And there's also foot traffic on Philadelphia Avenue all day. The potential for vehicular, meaning cars or scooters or bicycles, being in that close proximity to pedestrians, to me is a danger, and I would like to recommend that no funds go forward for the idea of widening Philadelphia Avenue. So, thank you.
Very much. Ms. Jackie Moore?
Good evening, Jackie Moore, Ward 2. Thanks for coming out, Delegation 20, sorry. My voice is a little flaky. So I appreciate the chance to let you hear another local voice regarding the Tacoma Junction project. It's my opinion that Adrian Washington and his company, NDC, have truly punked our mayor and council with the exception of Councilmember Smith. Mr. Washington's project is too big for the space. In fact, he's currently in the process of trying to acquire the air rights of surrounding buildings in an admittedly allowable sleight of hand to pass muster with the Montgomery County Planning Commission. Mr. Washington is not the type of developer Tacoma Park wants or needs. The residents of the Deanwood neighborhood in Washington, D.C. are furious that their minority-owned businesses were locked out of their properties by NDC. In fact, Black Lives Matter protested Mr. Washington's actions in Deanwood and led a march to his home. Our council has gotten advice from Dr. David Cronrath, a former dean of the University of Maryland School of Architecture. If our mayor and council had done their due diligence, they would have learned that Mr. Cronrath's MO has been to design buildings first and have the humans who have to use and work in his buildings adapt themselves to the structure. He puts bricks, mortar, and stone above people. In fact, one of his previously proposed projects for the UMD campus did not get built due to a lack of funds. There was much rejoicing at the McKeldin Library when Dr. Cronrath's project was tabled. My neighbors and I want a junction that works for all: pedestrians, cyclists, drivers, shoppers from all income levels, residents, and our beloved co-op. The NDC plan as it is now only works to serve one purpose: lining Mr. Washington's pocket. Our local businesses in the junction have been cautioned by a prominent Tacoma Park commercial landowner and property manager to think twice before speaking up to voice their concerns about the NDC project. I would have thought this sort of tactic to be antithetical to the spirit of Tacoma Park. Shame. I want a Tacoma Park that puts community first. Now on to cell towers. I understand that the FCC and telecom companies have both our city and our town by the short hairs, and that we're also trapped by what the state does. So as our state delegates, we really need you here. We need to make sure that you build in tighter enforcement to ensure that people and trees are put above profits. Tree roots and canopies need to be protected, and if they're damaged, the telecom companies need to be forced to make restitution. Warning signs need to be on the small cell towers so that personnel who work on them from time to time take all necessary measures to keep themselves safe. I remember working on my university's 3,000-watt FM transmitter located atop a dormitory with nothing but insulated gloves and a screwdriver with an insulated handle when we had to fix the exciter or a circuit breaker. The things my fellow radio pals and I did to keep our station going were stupid in retrospect, but there were no warning signs. You quickly learn, however, to work one-handed so that your body doesn't become a conductor. I want the safety protocols put in place by Crown Castle and other interested telecom companies to be top-notch so that no one gets hurt. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Next, we'll have Barbara Rosenblatt.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I live on Ethan Allen Avenue, and I'm concerned about the prospect of it being widened. I think that such a plan would really practically destroy part of our community. I think there are other solutions that can be looked at, one of which would be to stagger the lights, the traffic lights, so that you're not waiting 3 and 4 and 5 minutes to move 2 blocks. I think that could be done. And I think perhaps the state could work in concert with the city to change some of the structures of our local streets. For example, I think that Manor Circle could be made 2-way so that anybody who is stuck in traffic on Ethan Allen has the opportunity to get off Ethan Allen, especially when emergency vehicles are a consideration, being that the fire station's so close. The other street I would spotlight would be Jackson Avenue, where at this time you can only turn right from Ethan Allen onto Jackson in the middle of the day. I don't see any reason for that restriction when it could, again, take care of some of the traffic. I am really frustrated with the safety issues that those of us who live on that street encounter every day, with emergency vehicles going by and literally having no place to go. But I don't think widening the street is the answer. It will just generate more through traffic. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, that ends our public comments for this evening. You had to sign up ahead of time, if I make an exception for you. We're going to now go through the legislative priorities for the city, and then we'll spend the rest of the time having our delegation answer questions that have been raised by members of the public, as well as tell us what they're going to be up to when they go to Annapolis in January. Can I advance this? We're going to do it there. Okay. So Just to give us a quick overview, we have been talking about the bond bill funding for the expansion and renovation of the Tacoma Park Maryland Library, as Mr. Loeffler just talked about. We'll talk about that a little bit more, and we just do want to say thank you to the delegation for their continued support on that. Next, as a number of members of the public have talked about, we are requesting legislation prohibiting the Maryland Department of Transportation from spending any funds for the construction of Maryland Route 410 through the city of Tacoma Park. The next is looking for support for much-needed state highway improvements to New Hampshire Avenue. And then also another major priority to round out our top 4 is mitigate the impacts of the Purple Line construction on area small businesses and low and middle income homeowners and renters. Our other priorities, legislation mandating coordination and cooperation between utilities, State Highway Administration, and municipalities in order to minimize impact on residents and businesses from infrastructure construction and repairs. This is an oldie but a goodie that we're bringing back again, and we'll talk about this a little bit more this evening. Councilwoman Kostick and I were just in a meeting very late, going late last night, regarding some PEPCO work on Eastern Avenue. Next is support for expanding opportunities for municipalities to raise revenues without increasing dependence on property taxes. Support for building community resiliency and mitigating the impacts of climate change. And then finally, the City Council and the prior City Council have been doing a lot of advocacy regarding the public schools in our community and the need for construction funding. So I'm going to first turn it over to Councilmember Kovar, and he's going to go a little bit more in depth regarding the library expansion and renovation.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks to our D20 folks for being here. We appreciate it. It's great to sit up with you on the dais, and thanks to the people who took the time to come out and speak. I really appreciate getting to hear from them. I'm just going to talk about the library now, and I think Merrill Loeffler really, to me, hit it on the head when he said you can go into the library at any time of day and you see an incredible array of people, and at certain times it's the little kids with the babysitters and the parents who are there for the circle time. At other times it's adults in the afternoon using the computers to apply for jobs. At certain other times it's the seniors who are catching up on reading that they're interested in, and it just goes on and on. I think the school piece that Mr. Loeffler mentioned is important also, because particularly with Piney Branch and also Tacoma Park Elementary, they have these ongoing processes where they go over there and benefit from it. So we really want to see the library continue to be one of the hearts of the city and to have it expanded. And really the amount is modest, and the reason we're asking for the additional $150,000 is because, as also mentioned, there's the floodplain issue. And I just want to point out, some people said in this building, well, if we'd known what was there with the floodplain, maybe things could have turned out different. So in this case, we took the extra time, we looked at it. The floodplain's a little bit different from what we had thought before, just in sort of the natural way things change, and also maybe the fact that we're in what we've been talking about is the new normal because of the heavy rains and so on. And so we're going to take the additional steps that we need to take to ensure that the building is constructed in a way that will not lead to problems as a result of that. And from what we understand from our architect and from the engineers and so on, the additional $150,000 should help us do that. And so we would like to do whatever needs to be done to work with you all in Annapolis. I'll come and talk to whoever you tell me to talk to try to get the funds. So thank you.
Got a couple more pictures you can see, but you're always welcome to come and come to story time. Great. Next, we're going to talk about prohibiting widening of Maryland 410. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Councilwoman Kostick.
I just want to reiterate Councilmember Kovar's thanks to you all for being here. It's good to have you here to have this opportunity to talk more about our priorities. I'm looking forward to the upcoming session in Annapolis. I also want to thank the members of the public who came out to speak tonight, and particularly on this topic regarding prohibiting the widening of Maryland 410. The second bullet point here is that it could seriously change the character of Tacoma Park, and I think that's really key here. We have a lot of great historic resources along Philadelphia Avenue and Ethan Allen Avenue. A lot of the houses, most of the houses, if not all, date back to 100 years ago or so, as you all know. And as was mentioned by several members of the public, there is not a significant amount of yard in front of most of these houses. So any widening of this road would really impact the people living there. But it would also impact people throughout the city. If these roads were expanded, we would lose one of the things that is very valued by people in Tacoma Park in terms of the walkability of the city and the number of people who walk to school. That would be seriously impacted, and there would be a reduction in safety throughout the city. So while we've been told that the state has no intention of widening the road, a specific prohibition on doing so would provide us with that additional protection and would ensure that this is not something we need to be concerned about and is not something that is going to happen moving forward. So we appreciate your support on that. Thank you.
Great. Next, we'll have Councilwoman Searcy talking about New Hampshire Avenue.
Not on.
Yep.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, good. Thank you so much, Mayor, and I want to thank all of the delegates that are here tonight. It's so important for you all not just to hear from us, but to also have an opportunity to hear from residents in the community to learn about the things that matter most. As the Mayor mentioned, I'm going to talk a little bit about New Hampshire Avenue and just kind of set the stage a little bit. New Hampshire Avenue is a bit of a pickle of a road, and that depending on where you are on New Hampshire Avenue, the county lines switch back and forth. It's actually one side of the street may be Montgomery County, the other side of the street might be Prince George's County. You have that in addition to the needs of state highway, coordination with various utility companies, Pepco and the like. You could find yourself in a situation where one half of the street would have street lights that Tacoma Park has selected, but the other side may not because that's Prince George's and we need to coordinate with them and they need to coordinate with Pepco to try to have something that is streamlined down New Hampshire. It's also a major entrance to Maryland. It's important for us as a state to really start thinking hard about how things like Amazon were lost. You know, are there major gateways to the state that are currently not being invested in enough to really demonstrate that the state of Maryland is a place for people to be? And lastly, you know, it's a challenge in that resources are strapped. And although we appreciate the work that was done with the highway user fees, which might help the city to have some additional resources to invest in different kinds of beautification efforts along New Hampshire Avenue, it simply isn't enough. And so it's going to require additional resources at a state level in order to ensure, one, coordination, but two, that there are dollars available to make the necessary improvements. Next slide. So there's a lot of opportunities that are here. We have a plethora of sector plans. There are segments of New Hampshire Avenue that has been identified as an opportunity zone. There's also lots of improvement work that's happening in correlation with the Purple Line, Ethan Allen Gateway work, as well as various bike lanes, rapid bus transit, and the like. And there's also a huge return on investment. So there's been plenty of studies that have been done by the state that show that investing in this corridor could actually result in a $2.7 million revenue generation stream for the state of Maryland. So for every dollar that we put in, you would see that back in the state. Next slide, please. So, but again, I can't stress enough, it's a challenge, right? So we have this, and it's a little hard to see here, but you see where that purple line is. It is the purple line. So there's going to be definite improvements at the intersection of New Hampshire Avenue and University Boulevard. We're doing our part at Ethan Allen, right? But we still have that Maryland Gateway area that our colleagues over in DC, you see that they're doing some things, but there's not as much happening in that stretch between the DC line and Ethan Allen. Moreover, what's important to keep in mind when we're talking about this whole concept of opportunity zones, the area that is in pink, that is neighboring the Purple Line station, is actually designated as a Purple Line zone. So it's a lot of the businesses that are in the Crossroads area, are also across the street on the Prince George's side, as well as some areas that single-family homes, New Hampshire Gardens, as well as Prince George's County, leading a little bit more, Langley Park leading more up to the University of Maryland. So it's important to keep in mind that there are all these players that need to be at the table in order to ensure, one, that the infrastructure is in place, and two, that the development that happens as a result of the Purple Line, but also opportunity zone designation really doesn't mean very much, if I could be candid, to the various, the city of Tacoma Park, our colleagues over in Prince George's County. It really means a lot more to investors who have, capital gains tax that they don't want to pay, right? So let's just be candid. And so the goal is to try to figure out some way that we can work with you all to ensure that the businesses and the homeowners and the renters in these areas are not displaced as a result of these incentives that have been placed on an investment community to invest in the area, which we want, thumbs up, but we don't want it to result in people not being able to be there anymore. Next slide. Right. So again, Purple Line is coming. I will say, that the communication has been excellent. Staff, MTA, and folks that are working on the Purple Line sites have been very, very communicative with the community. They respond to our emails and messages and have presented to the council. So they're doing their part, but it's important for folks to keep in mind that their part is building the train. They're not really into a lot of the social aspects of what the development brings. It's going to be up to us to figure that part out. I think that's my last slide. All right. So again, our ask, support legislation to create sources for funding to assist businesses likely to experience continuity of operation challenges, cash shortfalls. There's other needs like signage during construction, which Purple Line Transit Partners have been wonderful and have agreed to provide some signage, but it's facade things, it's not going to be enough. There's also going to be a need to work with the city to put safeguards in place aimed at maintaining affordable housing in areas with rising property values and rents. Thank you so much, Delegate Wilkins, for Just Cause Evictions and your leadership there. We definitely want to support you in that. I also want to highlight the need for there to be a greater attention paid to condo communities. And making sure that there are infrastructure in place to help. Many people, when they buy a place, they buy a place. They don't feel like they're buying an entire building. And so as a result, you may have a number of condo boards who are not set up or don't have the resources that they need in order to manage a building such that their buildings can maintain and maintain the quality and they're not financially going under. So I think it's important for us to think about all types of housing and ensuring that folks are able to continue to stay in the city of Tacoma Park and enjoy the benefits that we think the Purple Line will bring.
Great, thank you. And now on our next priorities, we're going to start off with Councilmember Smith, and then he's going to turn it over to Councilwoman DeBala.
Okay, I'm going to talk about two priorities here. One has to do with mandating coordination between the utilities, State Highway Administration, and municipalities. A number of years ago, I chaired a utility subcommittee put together by the Maryland Municipal League, and we brought in everybody from BG&E, Comcast, Pepco, Potomac Edison, SHA, Verizon, Washington Gas, and WSSC. To summarize that meeting, everybody agreed that all the utilities could communicate better with the municipalities. But the question is how. I think Pepco does a very good job in sending out alerts, putting together conference calls to make sure that local officials know what's going on in their jurisdictions, but the other utilities, not so much. They're trying to take these big organizations and making sure that they understand that there are other stakeholders involved other than just the residents that they provide the service to and the contractors. And another big problem with the utilities is a lot of the work is done through subcontractors. And so for them to manage these subcontractors becomes really difficult. So the question I have for the delegation is if it makes sense to sponsor legislation during the upcoming session to try to force the utilities to coordinate and better with municipalities, or does it make sense to go through the Public Service Commission and try to tighten up the mechanism and the ways for the utilities to look at municipalities in Maryland as partners? There are 157 of us. We represent 1.5 million residents. But a lot of times when work goes on, when there are projects that the utilities know about it for years because it's in their capital improvement budgets, that they make sure that not just staff in the municipalities know about this, but also the elected officials know, so that they can tell their constituents what's going on. My other bullet I want to talk about is revenue generation. I asked MML to provide me some information about the revenues that municipalities receive. 65% of our total revenue comes from property taxes. It's just not enough with the services that we're all providing. Some areas that potentially we can receive revenue, if the state legalizes marijuana, that is a potential source for revenue. I hope that the state delegation, D20, and their colleagues make sure it's not just about citing distribution or facilities in municipalities, but also making sure that the revenues transfer into the municipalities. I know we don't receive sales tax, but that is another area that potentially municipalities could get from the state. And we're not talking about a lot of money. We're talking about 1, 2, 3, 5% of the sales tax. That would only equal about $100 million for all of the 157 municipalities to split. For us, that's a lot of money. But one thing that I want to make sure that the delegation knows about that is unique, the city of Chicago has done it, is taxing the streaming services. That includes putting a tax on Netflix, Sling, Hulu, and this is done through the amusement tax. This has been challenged in court. It was upheld by the courts, but it is a unique opportunity to expand the number of revenue sources for municipalities, because right now we're up against the wall. We can't increase property taxes. Thank you.
So I'll pull up the end here with the last. It's not the last slide. I have some pretty pictures, with two or not so pretty pictures. So our last two priorities, simply put, on school construction funding. Down county schools are overcrowded. Projections show that that's going to get worse, not better, over the next decade or two. There's plans on the books to expand schools. That's not enough. There's a need to look for another school down county, and all of that takes money and cooperation from the state. So enough said on that one. The other, to last but certainly not least, is the impact of climate change on our community, not only us, but communities all throughout Maryland. The climate is changing, and we are definitely feeling it. To paraphrase, if Mama Earth ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. Record-breaking rains. Everybody knows that. Peter mentioned and I think Wayne Sherwood mentioned the floodplain study for the library is just one small example of how we have to rethink and how we have to replan, which does take leadership from you, coordination from the state, support, and funding to address a dramatically changing situation. The unprecedented stormwater issues and flooding over the year are now to be the new normal. COG study that came out recently notes that 2-day, 3-inch rains are now going to be common around here, where our stormwater system and many others like it were planned for the notion that that would be the exception, not the rule. So next slide, please. Here are just, well, maybe not. Flood it out. There you go. Yeah. So we want to call your attention to not just the obvious, which is the work that we all need to do to reduce our own impacts on greenhouse gas, one of those emissions, on greenhouse gas emissions. And while that is also important, we are also feeling it now and need your leadership to prepare for the inevitable impacts and to work on mitigating them on our residents. And as the legislative session list comes out and we look at what the bills are there infrastructure bills, are there financing bills, what are the things that we need to pursue here? So we'd like to work with you on that as well as on mitigation. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll send you those lovely pictures of the flooding. I'm going to turn
Yeah,
to...
I'm bummed. They're
All right.
really,
Yeah,
really good.
They are. I'm going to turn to Councilmember Siemens to say some closing remarks before we turn it over to our delegation.
Thank you. I just again wanted to thank the delegation for being here and also acknowledge the regrets from Delegate David Moon, who had a previous engagement scheduled. It sounds like a lot that's been discussed tonight, but there's really 3 major goals that we've talked about. The first being to provide tools so that we can be more efficient by making the utilities and the SHA play fair in the city, and to give us the ability to diversify our revenue sources. And a second goal would be to help us preserve the city's character, and we heard about not widening Route 410, safeguarding the current residents and small businesses as the purple line comes through the city, and help to mitigate the impacts of climate change. And then the third goal is to support the city's improvements. And as we look to improve things, join us in expanding our library, improve the New Hampshire Avenue, which will help to facilitate economic development, and fund expansion of our public schools. So with that, we hear how you're going to accomplish all those things.
Yes.
In this term.
All right. Thank you. I just also like to let the delegation know we did give you copies of a blog we put up on all the work we've done over the past year in 2018 and looking forward. And for residents, that blog is up on the city website if you'd like to take a look at it. So now we'd like to turn it over to you, and I guess we'll start with our senator.
Well, first I just want to say thank you to the mayor and to the council for having us here. These sessions weren't always something that occurred in District 20, and so just thank you for having us here, letting us hear from folks that come out, and but also your priorities face-to-face. It helps with the relationships, it helps with clarity of purpose and mission, so just thank you again for that, because I know this is probably the 3rd year running now. So I appreciate that. I also want to just give a shout out to Delegate Wilkins, and Delegate Charkunian and Delegate Moon. Delegate Wilkins is now the chair of the Montgomery County Land Use Committee, which is a big deal. So congratulations for that. That's a big deal for our community. It's also a big deal for our county. So she'll have a lot of influence on some of the stuff that's going to be coming through, and she can answer some of those questions. I know she'll delve into that. Delegate David Moon is still on Judiciary Committee. He is waiting for his impending subcommittee assignments. It's great because he's a criminal justice warrior, and you'll have great influence on that committee. He'll continue to be a voice for us there. And then we pulled a coup with Delegate Charkoudian in getting onto the Economic Matters Committee. That's a big deal because now we'll have some influence and input on things like the minimum wage, fair wage laws, union bills, unionization. So we've never had that voice on there from District 20, so that's a big deal. So I just want to say congratulations on your new assignment as well. I'll just take a couple of seconds to just talk about some of my personal priorities and then answer some of the questions, and then I'll shift off and then we can come back around to the Q&A if that's okay with everyone else. Also, I neglected to mention that I'm now the vice chair of judicial proceedings on the Senate side. Again, so yeah, it's something that District 20 hasn't had before, so I think I look forward to working in that capacity moving forward. So some of my top priorities for this next session is something called the HOME Act, and we talked a little bit, Janelle has done some fantastic work on just cause eviction, and in Tacoma Park and Montgomery County, well, Tacoma Park has moved forward. Obviously, we've been ahead of the game here for just cause eviction and for source of income discrimination. So thank you for the work that you've done here. But in Montgomery County, that's still something that's very prevalent. And so what her work, I think the HOME Act will work hand in glove with what she's been doing as well. But essentially, the HOME Act is a source of income discrimination. All throughout Maryland, we don't have it here in Montgomery County, and we don't have it here in Tacoma Park. But all throughout Maryland, a landlord can discriminate against someone based on their legal source of income, to include alimony, Social Security, and that all-important Section 8 voucher. This basically hamstrings people from being able to move to areas of opportunity, places that are closer to their job, places where there are better schools, and has ended up clustering and concentrating poverty throughout our state. And so this piece of legislation would be, I think, revolutionary in expanding opportunity for families. Most voucher holders in Maryland, 70%, are single mothers with a job or two. So these are folks that are working hard, trying to make ends meet, and the majority of that 70% are women of color. So this would have a tremendously transformative effect on working families and expanding opportunity for folks. And they got it out of the House last year. The bill languished in my committee this year. We have some new committee members, so I'm optimistic about getting a fair shot at getting it out of the Senate. Again, another act is the Trust Act. I'm the lead sponsor this year of the Trust Act, and that essentially prevents our state and local law enforcement from being deputized to enforce immigration laws, mainly that ICE detainer, for rounding up immigrants and honoring an ICE detainer, which is a request from the Department of Homeland Security to hold someone past the point that they would have initially been allowed to have been held. This has been challenged all throughout the country. It's now working its way through circuit courts and appellate courts on Fourth Amendment grounds. And it's opened up liability for lots of municipalities and for counties. So that's something that if MML is paying attention, which I know you all support it, but if we don't protect ourselves and we don't protect our communities, there's also a real fiscal impact that would have throughout the state. So not only does it make fiscal sense, it makes humanitarian sense and constitutional sense. And so that's something that I'm excited to be working on moving forward. Again, that came out of the House. The Senate was really the problem in making sure that it got out. So we look for, again, a new Senate this year, and so I'm optimistic about the shot. We've had a great conference call. I know Janelle is going to be taking on some of those bills, and I know Laura is going to be instrumental and on the floor in the House getting it back over to me. I'll talk just very quickly, body attachments. That's basically debtors' prisons. In Maryland, this happens a lot. The ACLU and the Maryland Consumer Rights Coalition put out a report last year that showed that basically we're using a criminal process to effectuate a civil infraction. Folks that are delinquent on a bill, and in Maryland, 60% of debt is medical debt. And basically what will happen is, especially with impoverished communities, you'll get a notice If you're a transient, if you moved around a little bit or you didn't get the service because proper service isn't required, you may miss the fact that you get a court date, you get a judgment, and then basically a bench warrant is issued for your arrest because you missed a court date because the underlying offense is that you owed a little bit of money. There was someone just last year, actually earlier this year, that was arrested for $25. And that's highlighted in a couple articles. I'm happy to pass it around. $25, they're incarcerated. That has devastating impact and effect on working families. Obviously, the collateral consequences from being incarcerated, even for a short amount of time. I'll just wrap up very quickly with there's a big push. I'm making a big push for some of the juvenile justice reform in the criminal justice space. We did justice reinvestment a couple years ago, which fundamentally changed the way we deal with nonviolent criminals, essentially, and offenders, essentially, cutting those sentences and reinvesting the savings in deterrence and treatment, especially for folks that have substance abuse problems. It's a much smarter way to approach crime. This year, I'm really shifting and hoping to focus on juvenile justice issues, and there I'll just go through a couple of them that I'm working on. One is Maryland is ranked in the middle of the pack, middle lower of the pack in terms of fines and fees for when a juvenile gets entangled within the criminal justice system. There are lots of fines and fees that if you don't pay them, then you go back and you get incarcerated for. So that's something that, especially the court fees, that's something that I've talked to a lot of the public defenders with. That's something I'm looking for. There's something called indefinite probation, which is certain offenses, a juvenile will be on probation indefinitely, and that means if you reoffend, then you're back in the system. So we want to implement some common sense measures that have a definite and a finite end so that people have a goal to work toward and you can get off of this indefinite probation. Most of the folks that get thrown back into jail because of violation are technical violations, meaning that they missed a meeting or they either pop positive for substance use. Of marijuana is most likely the case. So with that, I've got something like 40 bills, but so I'm not going to go through all of them. But those are the highlights. I'll shift over to Janelle and then to Lorg, and then we can go into the Q&A if that's okay with you. All right. So thank you all for being here tonight.
Good evening, everyone. It's so good to be here with you tonight, and I want to thank you all for coming out, members of the public, for making your voices heard and sharing your priorities with us, and also to the mayor and the city council for hosting us for another year. I really look forward to this meeting each year. I want to let you all know how much we're listening. I'm taking copious notes on the priorities that you all have laid out so that we can carry that with us during the legislative session. And a lot of what I heard really had to do with transportation issues, the environment, housing and displacement, and very important concerns that are bedrock issues for us, preserving our community here in Tacoma Park, and really issues dealing with our livelihood and the future generations. I want you to know that when it comes to those issues, not only will we be championing those while we're sitting here in front of you, but while we're in Annapolis, while we're in our caucus meetings, while we're talking to our colleagues and making sure that these are a top priority for the 2019 legislative session. In particular, I wanted to lift up a couple of issues around the 410 widening. That's a local Montgomery County bill that I believe Senator Smith has sponsored. That's a bill that will be coming to the Land Use Committee that I'll be chairing this upcoming year. So I'm really excited about being able to have some influence over that legislation and really helping to champion it and make sure that we're able to pass that legislation for our community here. So wanted to let you know that I'm in full support of that. I wanted to flag the clean energy legislation as has been outlined here before us through your testimony and from the comments from the city council and the mayor. We are in a dire situation in our nation, but we do have the potential in Maryland to really be a leader on this issue. And there's so much momentum that has built around the Clean Energy Jobs Act. It's legislation that the delegation have been champions on and that we will continue to be champions on. And I really think that this could be the year for us to get it passed. So let's not let up. We'll do our part and really want to continue working with you and organizing and advocating to make sure that that happens in the upcoming legislative session. I also wanted to mention around the Purple Line, and someone mentioned the University of Maryland and the really great work the University of Maryland has done on this issue. We worked together on legislation this past session around affordability and trying to mitigate some of the issues around the Purple Line. And so we're continuing those conversations around what some teeth look like for making sure that we have some codified language that can really support and help prevent that gentrification and that displacement. So I did want to flag that University of Maryland has been actively working with me on this issue, and we've outlined a couple of options for the upcoming legislative session, and I'll be sure to reach back and make sure that everyone is aware of what we move forward with. Senator Smith and I also sponsored legislation this past session related to businesses impacted by the Purple Line construction and helping to support them financially. One of the things that we're looking at for the next year is really making sure that we have that strong commitment from Prince George's and that we are coming together and championing this bill just strategically. So this is a region-wide piece of legislation, and so that's something that we're looking at to help ensure the passage for the next session. Very quickly wanted to just flag a couple bills that I'll be sponsoring this legislative session. One of them that you may have heard about and folks talked about a little bit tonight is around just cause evictions. I want to thank the City Council for their support of that bill, which has been really important to help it to move forward. Just cause eviction is about ensuring that no one is evicted without a stated justifiable reason. And what it does is that it ensures that we stop what's happening right now, which is that with 60 days notice, someone can be put out of their home and become displaced with just that 60-day notice, and no reason has to be provided whatsoever. And so what ends up happening is that someone ends up literally being evicted, which is where we put someone's belongings out, forcibly remove them. We put their belongings out in the private right of way, in the public right of way. And throughout the entire eviction process, no reason is even provided for why this is happening. So Just Cause really ensures that a reason has to be stated, and that reason is outlined in the legislation. So it's things like if you're renovating your property and taking it off the market, if someone commits an illegal act on the property, things like that. It's outlined in the legislation what people can be evicted for. And so that's something that is a top priority of mine, is getting that legislation passed. I also want to flag the U.S. Census. I think it's really important that we start talking about the census and the need. We talked about resources a bit, and I know that's a top priority for the City Council, is identifying those revenue streams. And when it comes to the census, it really is about resources for our community and making sure that every person is counted, so that when resources are being distributed, whether it's federal resources, state resources, that there is an accurate count of every single person in this community. We have a challenge with the citizenship question that's being litigated right now, where the federal administration wants to include that question around, are you a citizen? And we know the impact that would have right here in our community in Tacoma Park. And so we're really fighting to keep that off. We actually might hear a ruling within the next few weeks in terms of where the court stands on that question being included. So I definitely want to work with the City Council on things like complete count committees and really strategizing around how we ensure that in Tacoma Park, every single member of our community is counted and seen. This is the last thing I'll mention is the Kerwin Commission. I'm on the Ways and Means Committee in the House, and so one of the issues that we are going to be spending a significant amount of time on this upcoming session is the recommendations of the Kerwin Commission, which really is a body that has come together, a body of experts, to look at our education system comprehensively, look at our funding formula, how we distribute our resources, looking at how we work with students who are underserved, how we recruit better teachers and professionalize the teaching profession. So there's so much, there's a lot of just comprehensive reforms potentially to our education system, and we'll be working on legislation that will come from the recommendations of this commission. And so as you can imagine, with redoing a formula for the entire state, we'll be spending a lot of time debating and really advocating for equity in the way that we implement our education system. So I wanted to flag that as something that you'll probably hear a lot about in the coming months, and I'm really looking forward to playing a strong role there. So thank you again for having us and for participating tonight.
Delegate-elect Charkoudian. Thank you. It's very exciting to be here. I've spent a lot of time in this room, in these chairs, and never been here before, so thank you all for putting me here. Thank you to the mayor and the city council for having us tonight and for your really thoughtful input on the priorities. And I also want to thank everyone who came out. I am so proud to be from District 20 in general and Tacoma Park in particular, and I'm going to ask you to indulge me as I tell just one short story about how awesome you are. When I did a lot of campaigning around the state for other candidates because we were running unopposed in the general election, and I was getting my marching orders in a county that shall remain nameless, and I was getting the talking points, and I was asking all these follow-up questions. I'm like, so what is the policy then that you're proposing on whatever the issue was? And they were like, you're not in Tacoma Park anymore. Don't worry about it. And, basically it was a reflection of the reputation that we have of being really thoughtful about all the policies that we expect our elected officials to go and represent for us. And I couldn't be prouder to be from this community. So thank you for that and your presence here tonight and all the people who are watching on TV, because we do that in Tacoma Park too. I'm excited to be representing you. So I want to I'm going to start just highlighting a couple of things that came up. I'm excited to be on the Economic Matters Committee. And the energy bills tend to go there as well because utilities and utility regulation is under economic matters. And so the Clean Energy Job Acts bill will be there, and I will be everyone signed on, right? They asked us to fill out a pledge before we even got elected. So we'll be promoting and working on that. And seeing what we can do to strengthen the 100% component to that. Right now it's written so it's 50% by 2030 with a look back somewhere along the way to figure out, based on technological development, what the path can be towards 100%. So that can be strengthened. But the other thing that I want to highlight for folks is there's another piece that can get Montgomery County to 100% sooner. So right now, Montgomery County has a commitment to zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2035, and that's for the county, not just the government buildings. And that's a very difficult thing to get to if the utilities that are providing the energy to the county are only held to the state standards. And so I'm putting in a bill this year to create what's called community choice aggregation, which is an authorization bill, and it will allow for local governments, municipalities, or counties to create their own. So essentially right now in Tacoma Park, we have the Clean Choice Challenge. But it's an opt-in challenge, and of course everyone in Tacoma Park has opted in. But the idea behind a CCA is that it's an opt-out, and so if the county were to go forward with this, it would be the default energy for the county, and then people and businesses could opt out. So what it does is it would allow the county to actually get to 100% renewable energy for everyone in the county, with the exception of people who opt out. And right now, Mark Elrich and folks at the county are very supportive of the legislation, and so we're, it's another way to sort of push the envelope on the renewable energy usage. The other bill that's related to that I am very likely to put in, although still refining it, is related to energy efficiency, and the idea is to bring in a sort of shadow cost, a social cost of carbon into the cost-benefit analysis in construction projects. And so in addition to considering the return on investment of energy efficiency in construction projects, that you would add into it the social cost of carbon. And so what that does is it sort of incentivizes and increases the likelihood that you would invest in energy efficiency beyond just what you would have a financial return on, but you'd also be considering the impact to the entire planet. So those are a few pieces related to the environmental issues, and I'm interested in hearing some of the specifics that the council has in mind as it relates to the mitigation side of things.
I also wanted to just highlight that I think we're all in favor of not widening 410. I'm going to have to check with the ethics folks on this because I actually live on 410, so I have to figure out, my children walk to school along the pathways that you described, and so I have to figure out what my role can or can't be in advocating for that. I do want to make sure, though, that everyone is aware that widening 410 is not really on the table right now. So this isn't a response to a threat by SHA to widen it. They've said they don't want to widen it, that's not their intention, but it's really a preemptive measure to make sure that as other plans come or anytime in the future that it doesn't get widened. But I do want to make sure that folks are aware of that. The other, another bill that Senator Smith and I are putting in is related to CIT, which is crisis intervention teams with law enforcement. Tacoma Park has a pretty good one, but I've spent a lot of time talking to Chief Duvall about his vision of how it could be improved, and also with police leadership in Montgomery and Prince George's County. And our bill will really support the technical support from the Police Training and Standards Commission and from folks who are experts in mental health provision to really improve the CIT programs for law enforcement around the state. And so we're very excited about that. It sort of has been something that we've been interested in for a while, but it led to this point because, of course, we were all devastated by the killing of the unarmed black man, Robert White, recently in Silver Spring, and it got us asking about the various responses and what supports are in place in terms of looking at how law enforcement responds to, specifically in mental health crises. And so that's led to this bill. So that's coming. I'll just mention quickly a few other things. I'm working on I've been working with the School to Prison Pipeline Commission, really looking at bringing more restorative practices into schools. It's the work I've been doing professionally, but now there's legislative options that are coming out of that commission, and so I'll be working on some of those options and implementing them, and to increase the opportunities for schools to increase restorative practices, as well as to gather data better so we can hold schools accountable and hold the state accountable for the connection between how discipline happens in schools, where there's real disparities between children of color and white children, as well as between children with disabilities and children without disabilities. And so really looking at those disparities and what are the changes we can make in disciplinary practices to address those. And just briefly, one last thing on the issue of developmental disabilities. I've been speaking to a lot of parents of adults with developmental disabilities, as well as DDA and some advocacy groups. And I am still trying to figure out what role the state can play in supporting better job opportunities. And I am still I probably won't have a bill this year, but I just wanted to highlight that it's on my radar, and it's sort of an ongoing conversation, and I'm really interested in continuing that conversation with, I know folks who are great advocates are here today, and others as well.
Great. Great. So now we're going to open it up, and I just want to say I'm really looking forward to 2019, and not just because of the amazing committees you are all on, but just also the relationship and how much each of you have been true champions of the city and residents here. And so I think there's a lot to build on, and it's going to be an exciting year. It's actually already started. The hearings have already started on a number of these bills. And so I do encourage residents. It's hard work that our delegates do. They're doing amazing work, and we're happy to help talk to you about how to testify in Annapolis and support their good work. But I think Senator Smith wanted to
I'll take the
come
promotion.
back. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks. I just wanted to address some of the things that were brought up during the hearing, and then also some of the issues that the council members brought up. I'll start off with education. In Montgomery County, we have 206 schools, about 162,000 students, and in District 20, we've got 23 schools, and countywide, we're growing at about 2,600 students every year. It's a small high school every year. And Delegate Wilkins talked about the Kerwin Commission that had its last meeting today, I think, and they've pushed back their recommendations. That's the second iteration of you remember the Thornton Commission, you probably remember that. And the biggest thing that came out of the Thornton Commission was the GCEI, which is the Geographic Cost of Index, which was greatly beneficial to Montgomery County because of our high cost of living here. The threat and Janelle can get more into this because she sits on the relevant committee of jurisdiction, but The thing that we need to look toward as a delegation, as a Montgomery County delegation, is how the formulas are recalculated, because as much money as we as a county give to the state, we need to make sure that we get enough back for infrastructure and for teachers, because we are growing faster than any other jurisdiction in the state, and we are already the largest jurisdiction in the state. In fact, District 20 has the largest high school in the state until Gaithersburg. There's a new school up in Gaithersburg that's being completed. Next year, I think they'll eclipse us. But Montgomery County still has the biggest schools, and District 20 still has the biggest schools. So we have to, when the recommendations come out in the next, 3 or 4 weeks, we need to have, an eye toward how we're going to make sure that we get our fair share, so to speak. And with 32 members of our delegation, we are the largest delegation in the state. And so if we stick together, I think we can come out with some pretty good results. With respect to the Clean Jobs Energy Act, we, a little bit of a backstory. Last year there were two competing visions for the bill, and this year over the interim, they've come together, and I think we've got a coalition that's now working in concert with each other. So we're going to have a unified approach this year. And Maryland we are strategically poised to take advantage of something like this. I mean, we're in the Mid-Atlantic. We've got a Tier 1 port in Baltimore. We can invest in kind of expanding our port so that we can export and build things. There's efforts to put a lot of wind off of Ocean City. These jobs that are created, I mean, we're talking about $85,000, $100,000 jobs. These are really great jobs. You talk about the green, the new Green Deal down in Washington. We can do that here in Maryland. We've got all the tools. We've got plants shutting down and workers ready to do it. If we put the financial incentives in place and you have a long-term strategic vision of how you're going to do this, if we had a different governor, we'll talk about that later, but if you had a long-term strategic vision how to do this, you could really see how Maryland could be a nationwide leader on this, and would have a tremendous environmental impact for all of us. For the widening, I'm the sponsor of the bill, and we had our hearing in Rockville on Monday. We went to midnight, not on that bill, but we went to the one question that was asked by the chairman of E&T was that, was there precedent for this? And there is. In the statute, there is precedent for this. Even in Montgomery County, there's precedent for this. So I feel optimistic that we can answer those questions and assuage the concerns of the chairman. And I think, we all know somebody that the actual committee chairman that's going to go to first. I think I've got a friend over there, so I'm optimistic that we have a good shot with that. So we'll move forward together, unified. For the bond bills and for the library, so we've been supportive of that project. The way that the bond bills work is the House and the Senate have a pot of money that we can pull from. People come and apply. On the Senate side, I'm fully committed. I know in the House that they're committed to supporting this project. I actually have not received, and this is not an advertisement, but I have not received a number of requests. I'll just say it's publicly. So I'm fully committed to channeling the Senate side resources to this, which could free up some money elsewhere for us to decide how we're going to do it. So I'm confident that we'll be able to meet the needs of the city as a delegation together. We usually we meet about halfway through the session to decide that. So we'll be seeing you up in Annapolis to testify on that. We'll make sure you're apprised of when that schedule is. What else was there? I think that's all I had for the responses. And District 20 night? District 20 night is February 18th up in Annapolis. We invite you to come to the floor session afterwards, but we'll have food, some great speeches, not too many, and a lot of camaraderie. It's really great. Highly recommend you all come down and see how the legislative process works, and then we'd invite you to the House floor and to the Senate floor to be recognized in the gallery and to watch our session that night. So with that, I think I'll yield my time back.
Thank you. Wonderful. I just want to open it up to any of my colleagues for any other questions or thoughts, or if any of the delegates have any other thoughts? Yes. Okay.
I just noticed my notes. So I just wanted to talk about beltway widening because I know that's a concern and we're all opposed to that. So District 20 team is fully opposed to it. Most of the Montgomery County delegation is opposed to it. The conversation right now is about strategy. So folks may know that we have a state where the governor just has an extraordinary amount of control over the budget, about transportation projects, and there's been efforts over the years from the legislature to kind of gather more control or at least push for transparency on transportation projects, and they've been pretty minimally effective. And so right now we're at a place where we're trying to figure out what are the levers that the legislature can use to stop this project. And it's especially sort of insidious because there's not going to be a budget request on it because it's the P3, the public-private partnership nature of it, which creates the Lexus lanes, means that there won't be a specific budget request that the legislature can vote on. So right now, the current strategy is that Delegate Al Carr has a bill from Montgomery County that takes a concept from the Eastern Shore. Right now, in statute, the counties on the Eastern Shore all have local veto power over any new toll roads being built through their counties. And I don't know the history of how they have that, but that's what they have. And so so you have the precedents. So this bill would essentially create that same veto power for Montgomery County. And at this point, it doesn't look like the council would approve of the Beltway widening, certainly not as it's conceived right now. And then there's another bill that I think is going in elsewhere in the state that would actually just expand that to every county in the state. So both of those are kind of the options that are on the table right now. The county has other strategies that I won't go into in terms of keeping Parks and Planning from allowing land to be taken and lawsuits and everything else. But right now, the legislature, those are two of the key strategies that we're looking at to keep the Beltway from being widened.
Excellent. Well, I still see people here. So what I'll say is, why don't we close our formal portion of the meeting now, so that way people can. Oh, did we have a question?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and maybe I was anticipating what people might ask if we opened it up. I didn't realize we were going to. But going back for a moment to Route 410, so on the specifics of the bill, what do you anticipate at this point in terms of how people would have input into the specifics of the bill, especially people who live along that stretch? For example, could we have a living room session to talk about some of the specifics rather than get into all the details right now? But how would we best go about that?
Sure. I would certainly be open to if any sort of convening. If it happens, if people want to have input, I will be there. I will say that the way that the bill's drafted, I think, is prescriptive enough that it probably should satisfy all our needs as a city, but and leaving enough leeway for improvements for safety. And if you were to do something like a bike lane, I mean, I think that there's enough leeway there. There's also an MOU in place that was, I think, from 2003, 2013 rather. So I think there's enough there, but I'm happy.
Okay.
If you want to work together, we can do that.
Yeah,
I'm
that'd be
happy
good.
to do it. Yeah.
And I should have started by saying thank you for doing it, because it's really important to people. Yeah.
Given the legislative schedule that the senator will have, if we can also do something local here and make sure that his staff is here and that we get you feedback information.
Yeah,
So just because when you all are going to start soon, so
Yeah, and then you're going to be really busy. Yeah. Okay, great.
Yeah, I'd like to be part of that too. I did want to mention, though we touched on it but didn't get into it in too much detail, Councilmember Smith did talk about it, but several of the committees might be relevant for this, which is the utility question. So we have several long-term utility projects in the city, and it's just not going well. And they're going to continue on for another year or two, and just imagine a bad project, and to me and to a lot of the residents that I represent, is just way worse than it could be. And think about that, and then it's actually worse than that. And so we have to find a way. I think, one, communication is a really important part, and Jarrett's correct, and maybe some of them are better than others, but the condition that the roads have been left in now, and in some cases state highway, in some cases local, but this gets back to 410, never mind the widening, we're going to have like a sinking because they haven't been able to do the kind of patching that you'd really think you would want to have as you go through the winter months. You're not going to be able to, and I just think that even before it started, there were some sections of the road where people's houses shake when major cars go by. And I know we've talked in the past about the speed limit question too, but for me, this is just a really big example of something that on our own as a city is very difficult to get a hold of because we don't control. And the mayor's nodding, and I know I complain to her all the time about this, and she's been supportive and tried to do what she can, but I feel like with help of our elected officials in Annapolis, we could maybe begin to make some progress there, because right now it's just not adequate. I just want to say it's way worse than not adequate. So I'd love to follow up and talk more about that going forward. And I don't know, exactly how we find what the authorities are that the utilities have, and they're created in special ways that give them that. But even within that, either we change that in some way, or we find ways within that to require them to do a better job. So I'd really like to emphasize that's a major ongoing challenge.
And just to follow up on what Councilmember Kovar said, one of the things that we were successful a number of years ago when Congressman Raskin was still our state senator was to request a report regarding the environmental impact of having one utility come in, pave, fix the road, and then have another one come in. So we would love to think with each of you, also, are there things we can request during the budget process for reports that might be done to help gather some of the information to then inform legislation in the future?
And if I could just say, I love all our priorities. The only other one I want to mention is the rain and the impact that has on people's yards. For some reason, we didn't have the one slide that Cindy was going to show. Oh.
Yeah,
passing it
the
out.
dramatic photos of water.
And
Just
what was
for those of you who can't see this,
Right.
just imagine a lot of water all over your yard, your sidewalk.
Right. And I think the amazing thing about this is that to address it is very costly, and no one really knows who should pay for that, because we're entering a new normal era. And I didn't, because I was disorganized, I didn't even provide the most dramatic thing, which is the video of the white water down my front steps after several rainstorms, which I might send you guys that video separately. But I think this is one where no one really has figured out, where do we get the money? Because the average resident, when they have their next door neighbor, and it's not their fault, and water pours through their yard into theirs, it's not exactly city stormwater responsibility per se. It's not necessarily WSSC, as much as I might wish it was. And so it's like, how does this get addressed? I think that's this issue that's floating out there, no pun intended, that we're going to have to figure out how to deal with. So I'll stop there.
A couple things. One, I'm on the board of MML, and I want to make sure the delegation knows that the league is sponsoring our opening day legislative reception January 9th from 6 to 8 at the Calvert House. The other thing is regarding New Hampshire Avenue. It would be very helpful if the delegation reached out to President of the County Council, Ms. Navarro, to make this a priority on the letter that they send to MDOT, because without that, then it's very difficult to start moving the funding and making this a priority. So if we can get that to happen, then a lot of good things can come from this. Thank you.
Okay, great. All right, then I think now we can end the formal portion of our meeting. Thank you, everyone, for coming this evening. And again, thank you to our delegation for visiting with us again. Thank you.